Greetings, Cosmoteers, and welcome back to the Dapper One, which, as promised, got a fresh lick of paint in between episodes. And I'm actually really starting to like the design that we've got going on right now. It's not quite a theme, though I guess you could say the color is a theme, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to stick with this kind of design for future paintwork, but we'll see as the ship expands, or indeed, as we get more ships. Now, to start off this episode, going to address a couple of the very useful comments that I got on the previous episode. One of them, which really stood out, was by Gnaska, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, who pointed out that I don't need to simply upgrade to the next control room, which is a big help because the next control room requires about 3 times as many crew to operate it and has an enormous amount of command point capacity, but I could instead just rebuild, or rather have multiple bridges, or in this case multiple cockpits. And whilst that isn't going to give me quite as big a bang for buck on the space used in terms of command points, it will require much less crew to operate. So if we only need a little bit more command points, this is possibly the better option until we're starting to look at having 3 cockpits, because at that point we may as well go for the larger control room, just because we're not really saving anything on the bridge staff at that stage. The next thing that was pointed out, and this is a very fair concern, was by David2869, who noted a few concerns with the current build, that chief amongst them was how vulnerable this was. If anything can get through this shield, it's going to do damage to the ion beam prism. Now, these things, if they're not being powered, don't explode particularly badly. So, one way of getting around this is... Oop, that is not what I meant to do. Let's pop that back. One thing to get around this is to, if we come out of build mode, which is the problem, grab both of these, or can I grab them with shift? There we go, perfect. We can add these to control group. They are now control group 1. Now, the way that this is going to work is if... You have to be paying very close attention to your ship for this one, but as I mentioned, if this gets damaged and there's no power running through it, it doesn't really explode, or the explosion is negligible in size. But if there is power going through it, then the explosion scales to the amount of power, so running 2 ion beams through it at once means it's going to explode reasonably well, and will probably take out both of the ion beam emitters. Now, these are extremely expensive. This isn't cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but losing all 3 is a lot worse than just losing this. We would lose 25,000 credits worth of materials instead of just losing 5,000. Now, the easiest way to do that is go to control group 1, and as maybe pause time, or if you're running on particularly slow time, just tell them, we want them to power down. There we go. They would immediately stop firing, and then the last hit would take the last pip of health off this, and then it would explode. Or rather, it would break. So instead, we would want to very quickly disable them if we thought that this was going to go down. Now, that requires a lot of micromanaging, and it is still the case that you're going to lose this, and in our particular setup, that means the entire system would go offline, which would then leave us just with our point defense as our only weapon. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. The other way that we can do this, I'll keep those hooked up to a control group. Now, the other thing to note is that this beam is traveling right down the middle of the ship. So, if we went into build mode, there are a couple of things that you can do to try and help with this. Now, part of this is going to negate how useful this is. Let's go into design mode just so I can show this. The simplest and easiest fix is to simply do something like this. Give the ion beam a kind of a tunnel to fire through. Now, this does have one small drawback in that the ion beam right now is firing in a straight line, but one of the nice things about the prism is it acts a little bit more like a turret. So what we had previously, if we come back out of that and discard these, is this little turret here can aim in this kind of firing angle. It's quite a reasonable firing angle. But if we make a tunnel, then we're increasingly reducing the firing angle. But realistically, this ship kind of operates on the point towards the thing you're attacking anyway, so that would be one way of fixing it. But if you wanted to go a little bit further, now this is, I think, I think this particular type of method is actually usable on a couple of different weapons. The railgun is the one that springs to mind. But we don't have to just have this barrel here, because a shot could still come straight through. It would still have to go through two shields, but it's still got a relatively good angle to be able to hit the prism. Now, we will be making use of the particular function of these armor triangles. You notice that they're only half, if we imagine this is a meter squared, they're only half a meter from base to tip, whereas the regular triangle is more or less, it covers the entire distance. It would, no matter how we orientate this, it's going to block the beam. These do not. So you could do something like this, which further reduces the angle that any shots could attack from, which is going to give you that little bit more protection. And I think we're going to do something like that. And another thing we can do then is perhaps build out the armor right at the front. So we're now heavily armoring our weapon system, which is honestly quite a good idea just in general. So there we go. That will sort of solve. It does narrow the potential firing arc of the beam, but it dramatically reduces how likely any shot is to get to our firing crystal, our ion prism there. And, you know, having a bit of extra armor is never a bad thing in this game. In fact, so much so. Let's go ahead and pop a little bit down here. Now, generally speaking, I believe the overall kind of view with regards to armor is always more effective than shields. Bang for buck. This just takes a couple of armor plates, has a lot of health on it though. The shield emitter is, let's see if I can't bring up the actual details here. So this shield emitter here, if we discount the armor qualities of the facility itself, the actual shield control room, because you don't want that to be tanking the damage, you want to know how much strength the shield has. So it has shield strength of 15,000. This armor here has a hit point of 8,000. Now, in terms of cost, this is 5,000 and drains power on an ongoing basis. It needs crew to reload it. It needs, there's a lot of additional costs outside of just the cost of the unit. Whereas this, just one and done, you build it, you forget about it. It costs 400. Two of these would take up less space and would provide about the same, in fact, a little bit more, 1,000 more hit points. Now, granted, they don't regenerate, so shields are useful in that regard. That's a very specific shield-only quality. So, your mileage may vary. I like having shields just for their regenerative properties, but going down the armor route definitely isn't a bad choice either. Right, so there we go. That's a nice little thing that we can do. Very easy. Would need a little bit of extra iron plates, which we don't quite have enough of, so let's go about trying to find some, shall we? We've got an unknown contact down here. We've got a couple that we can return. Destroy defense platforms around an asteroid field over there. Should we go and poke our face in, find out what this contact is? Sure. There are lots of random things that you'll find around the world. There's actually a lot to explore, so it is well worth actually uncovering. Oh my lord, that was a little bit more than I wanted to explore. We've got a hyperjump beacon. We've got another unknown contact. That's more than likely a ship. We've got a lot of enemy contacts in here. We have got quests to clear them out. This is the asteroid field by the looks of it. But there's all sorts of things you'll find, like that hyperjump beacon. I'm not actually sure in the slightest what this does. Is this perhaps a point that you can jump into the system from, maybe? I don't know. We'll have to have a think about that one. That might be where hyperjumps into the system end up popping out at. We've also got a lot of industry that we can go and deal with, and I think we might be actually upgrading this ship to allow for a little bit of that in this episode as well, if for no other reason than grabbing some Hyperium, which we can then use to run our hyperdrive. Now, your cockpit right there, very nice. Once again, not actually going to get any closer than we are already. We may as well just sit back here and watch the fun. In fact, we'll slow it down and just have a proper watch of how this goes down. So There we go. Beam is active. It's going to start melting through all this. I'm not even sure that these cannons are going to be able to fire back at this range, frankly. Let's have a look. Can I see their range? It doesn't look like I can. Never mind. We're easily going to be able to just dig through this, so we don't even need to have it on low speed. There we go. Now, I had a couple of other questions as well. So thank you again to David2869 and Gnaskar for those 2 points. It was very, very useful. But Alfred Del Crow asked, how do you make a new ship? And this is actually going to be a very easy one for me to show. There are a couple of ways. Obviously, you can just find abandoned ships and claim them if you particularly want to. There's a bunch of crew in there. Is this going to work? I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. But you can create your own ship in a number of ways. One of them is you build it off your current ship. So you would build like a gantry, and at some point you can get an explosive charge, and you put that like midway down the gantry. I'll very quickly demonstrate what I'm thinking. So something like this, put an explosive charge here, another bunch of them, then you design a ship over here with an airlock, and you have some of your crew go down there because you move their bunks to the bunks in this little hull that you've built off your main ship. And then you just you make sure there's a bridge on there, and then you just destroy the charge. It will disconnect the ships, but because this is a self-contained and completely functional ship in and of itself, it's now a new ship. So there you go. You don't need to do anything more fancy than that. However, the way that we're going to do it is going to be over here. Now, assuming this works, let's have a look. Are you a valid target? Yes, you are. The small cannon platform right here. I'm going to send over just one crew. Head on over. Now, I'm not sure, because there are crew on board. They may fight. We'll see. Are we about to take this over? Are we performing a boarding operation? Is this now ours? It is now ours, yes. We have taken this ship. It is mine. So, with that, now these two ships, because they're proximate to each other, they can use the materials from one another. I can just go ahead and repair this whole thing if I really want to. Let's see how much that would cost. It would require some additional items that I don't easily have, but one thing I can do fairly quickly is repair this walkway. No, the cannon there. That's a bit of a shame. Okay, so you can't actually get in there, which is a bit of a problem. Let's do a bit of a switch up. We're going to place this around here. Right there. I'm going to hold control. I don't care about that cannon. That cannon is now gone. And then we can add this in. And that should mean that at this point I could repair what's left. There we are. This is now our station. This is mine. There we go. And the rest of the crew are just going to leave. Oh, that's very polite of them. They're like, oh, okay, I guess this is yours. So long. Well, that was nice. We didn't have to send over our crew member to gun them all down. That's always a win. But for all intents and purposes, this is now our ship. If we select them, we've now got the small cannon platform and the DPR-1. We could just leave our crew member here and they would do their best to try and fight, but I'm not sure. The cannons may actually still be functional even without the cockpit, but definitely the thrusters wouldn't activate without the cockpit, and we've lost a fair number of crew. Now, this is one way of taking over a ship, and then you can just rebuild it, add a bridge section, so on and so forth. I don't think we've even got remotely the kinds of materials that we would need for that, sadly. Let's have a quick look. How much? Oh, well, actually, no, we could put a little bridge on there. But do we really want it? I think this is a little bit early for us to worry about that. So instead, I'm simply going to break this down. That is another way of grabbing this, but as you notice, I'm getting less money back from this than I would normally, and the reason for that is that effectively this is salvage, and I imagine this is kind of a game balance sort of thing. They don't want to make it too easy to get the full refund, because, you know, if you could just reclaim all the materials on a reactor, that's a hell of a lot of fissiles very, very easily accessed to you. Oh, I've got to leave one thing, apparently. Could I? No. Invalid blueprints. Right. Okay. Discard modifications. Let me go through this the normal way. So holding down control, and everything is now gone. There we go. Nope. Can't get rid of that. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough beds for the crew member there. We'll just leave that there. I'll allow a tiny little bit of room for them to walk from one side to the other. There we go. And at this point, we are simply going to transfer the crew back, and then I'm going to reclaim what's there. Someone did mention to me on, actually, I think it was a Steam message. I do apologize. I don't use Steam very much as a kind of a social media platform. I generally use Discord or Twitter for that. But thank you very much for they did the math. Apparently, this is not as efficient as just salvaging it, frankly. So that is fine, and that's largely because you lose materials due to it being salvage. But let's go ahead and transfer those crew right back over. There you go. Get on back, and then we're simply going to take everything else. There we are. We'll recover the entire platform. There we go. So that was nice and easy. It's going to take them a little bit of time to get all of this in, I should imagine. There we are. I imagine that can't be recovered, sadly. Can I take it? No, but I can fire on it. So I guess that is what we're doing. What? Oh, okay. You decided you didn't want to be too close. Fair enough. Gotta be a nice distance away from this terribly threatening defense platform. Can't be too close. No. Alright, there we go. We don't really care for the ammo. I care more for almost everything else. So let's go ahead and get rid of some of the ammo that we've got stored up. Please drop all of that off and that. Thank you. And then we will just go ahead and gather what's left. Grab that and grab these. Then we'll move on to the rest of the cannon platforms. But that hopefully will answer your question on how you can get more ships. Generally speaking, I would recommend trying to salvage an actual ship, but it is very, very much worth your time to carefully approach and take out the cockpit only, if you can do that. Take out the cockpit without damaging the reactor, because that, in my opinion, is a much more expensive thing to replace. So you don't want to have to pop that one back on there. Oh, this massive asteroid in here wouldn't be too bad of a place to salvage or mine, I guess. All right, let's squeak through and pop these defense stations. Ideally, I imagine they're all going to more or less be the same thing. All right, give me a moment. And there we go. Now, there'll probably be enough material here to warrant me pulling this apart, but we're not going to be able to carry much, really. I'm mostly looking for hypercoils and fissiles, so it's the reactor that I really care about there. Could have even left this around, maybe, again, come back over here in order to capture this and then turn it into a ship, since it already had a reactor running. But that is all we're going to need. Eventually, I think these do despawn, but I'm not 100% on that anymore. I had a couple of comments suggesting that it's simply that I was building stuff nearby and then that affected it. Right, with all of the materials that we've got, we should be able to rock up and collect the bounty on all of these, and then go ahead and upgrade our ship a little bit. Now, I'm thinking of changing the positioning on our shield systems to maybe help out with having a little bit more of overlapping shields heading towards the ion core. Right, let's say hello to Cicero Station. Thank you very much for the bounty there, yes, and the clear asteroid as well. Many thank yous. Contact Atatoto Station, rather. That is here, so sure, I'll accept it. Is requesting assistance from any available Cosmoteer to help with a variety of missions. Very well, I accept. Destroy the pirate base. Still not going to happen. Ion delivery. Ion delivery? My lord. Reading is hard. Let's have a look through here. Now, again, as I've mentioned, you can totally make a profit as a trader in this if you particularly want to. A couple of people have mentioned that mining lasers would make salvaging so much faster, and I am on board with that idea. But there's a couple of other things I would like to get first, namely possibly even grabbing the explosive charge, but I would very much like a sensor array. Extends the sensor range of our ship. Now, considering that our iron weapon is currently outranging our ability to see our enemies, I think this is a very, very important pickup. Not sure how easy that is going to be to install. I guess we will soon find out. But let's go ahead and do a little bit of building. Once again, we're going to immediately make it so on the tunnel there. Let's get that in place. But let's have a look at how big of an item. Well, it's a 3x3. You can usually see by just these little nodules along the side. They seem to line up with that sort of stuff. We do need an extra bridge, though how and / where we're going to put it is another matter entirely. We need to do a bit of a more expansive fix here. Also, not very efficient with how close, or rather how far away, carrying this energy over to the shields. I think I would like to change that if we could. Give me a few moments. And with the addition of 2 more point defenses, and a little bit more armor, I think our redesign is complete. Now, this is a far cry from something that's efficient, namely the length of walk that our crew are having to take to get down to the engine section and the cockpit is rather disgusting, honestly. You may have also noticed that I've moved around the ion beams. Now, this is planning for their future, because eventually I would very much like to double up our power, our firepower, by doing this, and having these crystals merge in this central line. Now, that'll of course mean I'm going to have to move the cockpits again, but that I'm fine with. This would give us an awful lot of firepower. In fact, it would double the firepower that we take. Well, not quite. Now, there is a trick to the ion beams, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't notice. If we have a look at the ion prism, if you actually read it, redirects the angles of incoming ion beams, aiming them at enemy ships or other ion beams. And if we have a look in here, now one thing in particular, I feel this is a failing of the game, is that it doesn't mention that the more ion beams that go into something, the worse it gets, unless you have a look into the additional settings. Now, it's always worth doing this, but if we have a look at additional settings, specifically look at combined fall off. Now, it doesn't mention this in the tooltip, and I think that if it did, a lot more people, I think it might actually mention in the codex, but I think a lot more people would pay attention if it was in the tooltip. I'm not sure why it isn't there. But the first beam that enters a prism enters it at 100% of its damage. The second beam loses 25% of it. The third beam loses 25% of 75%. The fourth beam loses 25% of 56%, and so on and so forth. So by the time you add a fifth beam into this, you're only getting 32% of the damage output of the ion emitter, but you're paying the same price for it. So, generally speaking, if you're going to combine a beam, and I think you may as well, there's no reason not to combine the beams. It's kind of the fun of it. Don't combine them more than 2 to a node, and don't combine more than 2 nodes to the next node in the queue. There we go. So we've now got these 2 beams. We've not increased our overall damage. Well, no, we still haven't. Technically, this has increased its damage. Instead of the second beam emitter only inputting 75, we're getting 100% out of each of these crystals, but the problem is once those crystals converge on this one, you still have the 100%, then the 75%. So realistically, we haven't changed our overall damage. So we have dramatically increased the protection on certain parts of the ship, and very, very much increased the efficiency of the power being transferred down here. Now, this is kind of scarily exposed. Honestly, it's not a good design in that regard, but we will get around to that in a moment. Oh, let me come all the way out. What we want to do now then is go and find some more missions and test out this new design. In fact, let's go over here. Fugitive bounty over in this direction. Now, the trip down here is egregious. It is really, really long to get down to the both the cockpits and the thrusters. The only thing that is helping us is that each crew member is basically carrying 2 batteries per trip, thanks to the fact that they're carrying them from the medium reactors. That is the only saving grace that we have at the moment. But let's see how our new kind of more for the ion beam is going to play out. Let's have a look at you. I would like to just go ahead. Well, honestly, I could just burrow through, but we're not really going to try and do anything fancy here. I just want to maintain a certain distance. What kind of forward thrust have they got? Well, we've got a little bit more reverse thrust than they've got forward thrust. The thrusters, if you have a quick look at them, so small thruster, weak propulsion, If you hold down Alt, you can get some more information. That's 400 kilonewtons. The standard thruster gives you 1,200. It's basically twice the size, but 3 times the cost. And then the large thruster, which is twice the size again of the standard thruster, which has 1,200 kilonewtons, is offering 3,200. So our 2 large thrusters are massively outperforming their 4 standard thrusters. So we should be able to keep pace, though we're obviously going to have to slow down a little bit before we do that. So they are going to catch up with us a little bit, but that should be fine. We're shooting down a lot of their shots, but you notice now that our ship is struggling to bring the ion beam into alignment, because it's got a much narrower, tighter beam to fire through. Though it does look a lot better, I must say. So did we do a little bit of damage to ourselves there? We might have done a little bit. Can we burrow through? The moment we actually do damage to this, it's going to kill the ship. But we definitely need more rotational power now. Unfortunately, we're kind of locked in strafing, which is a bit of an issue. Oh, there we are. We finally managed to get a clean shot. But that is one of the problems that we now have. We need the ability to rotate aggressively, because we have now very much... Now, we're much safer, but we have got a much harder time now of bringing our weapon system to bear. We took a little bit of damage along the side as well, which I would actually like to try and sort out, but it's not much to repair. And as long as the damage that you're taking is fairly inexpensive, so plates and coils, which you're going to be getting a lot of, I wouldn't say that it's something you really need to worry about. But adding a little bit of extra armor here and there probably wouldn't go amiss. So I'll probably have a look at that in a moment. How much would it be for us to add a couple more of these? These large thrusters, way too much, frankly. Way too much for us to do that. I wouldn't mind getting a couple of extra turning thrusters, perhaps. And as long as I can have them right up against this, that's not a bad place to go in terms of the efficiency of getting the power in. Though there is another option for that as well, and that is the engine room. The engine room, as soon as you can build it, well worth building for your engine specifically. It will expedite delivering energy to the engines it neighbors, but also it will increase their output. So that alone might fix our problem. But for now, that is good enough. Let's go and grab a couple more of these bounties, and I shall bring you back when it's time to do a little bit more building. Now, whilst we're still out collecting bounties, one way that we can cheaply, it's kind of a hodgepodge way of doing it, but one way that we can cheaply mitigate some of the problem in carrying the energy cells down here is building a capacitor, which I should have thought of earlier, honestly. If we build one of these right there, this should take care of everything we need, and we'll also move around. Well, I guess having a door over there is fine. This one will be for energy access, and this will be for crew access. That should be fine, and then this way they can move the energy where it needs to be. And since I more care about the energy getting to the engines, we'll put the door on the bottom section there, and then remove that one again. This gives us the more efficient route for energy. Actually, I should do something like that here as well. Let's fix that. There you go. Door placement matter a lot more than I think people give it credit for. Having less doors is also useful, because they're not free. They cost 100 credits worth of coils. And now, one other thing we could do to try and help out with this, since the thruster doesn't really need to be towards the kind of front, we can actually burrow that in a little bit, so it's even more effective right there. And in fact, at this point, it doesn't matter enormously if we bring the energy down like this. I think that should actually work out. We'll have them go through the bridge in order to put to stack the fuel cells in the capacitor, but that should be okay. And this engine then has a couple of different routes out that it can take. Now, the next thing we could do is, as soon as we've got some hypercoils, we will actually build another one of... Oh, in fact, I can already. That would be marvelous. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and do this. There we go. We've got a lot more thrust at the back now. So that's going to be able to take us to our opponents a bit quicker. ideally what we want to do is actually have 2 at the top here, but that might take a little bit more time than we've got to play around with. That being said, maybe we could do something. Let's have a quick gander. This is a little bit more building on camera than I was intending, but hopefully you won't mind too much. Do let me know how you feel about having the building front and center. I know some people really, really prefer that. I get comments every now and then that people prefer when I don't cut things out, but generally speaking, the numbers seem to indicate that more people prefer to have the action kind of front and center, and the building a little bit less less common. You know, the little bits here and there, especially covering new topics, and that's why I've got Aavak After Hours, by the way, my second YouTube channel where I'll put up stream VODs and completely no cut content here and there. So that you kind of got the best of both worlds. That seems to be the best way to do it these days. Right, so little side over. Let's go ahead and add in some more armor around the side here. Let's do something like this. Having more armor is never, ever going to be a bad thing, in my opinion. So we might as well just flesh this out. Though it does actually increase our weight a little bit, I think. But that should do. And then we can pop back in... It's not ideal because the shield is a little bit to the side now. How much would it cost for me to add in some more shields, I wonder? See, I could. For a little bit less efficiency on the shield here, if I could move these shields across, give myself a little bit more room, have another shield. Ooh. Now we are possibly cooking with fire. Because, I mean, this shield does have armor on that side. And then if I were to do that... I know that's in the way now, so we would have to get rid of some of these. So let's just move those out a little bit. Again, it comes down to whether you want armor or shielding. I would say it's actually probably a good idea to kind of just settle on one. I'm being very wishy-washy. As a consequence, I'm having to use a lot of shielding, which again takes manpower, whereas armor doesn't. The other thing you can do... Now, I know that you can do this, and I'll demonstrate it quickly for you. Notice the exclusion zones here? Well, you can just bury these if you particularly wanted to. And this does make sense in some instances. For example, if I did something like that, that's completely valid. I could I just have to get rid of that little bit of armor there. But this would work. And you could have a kind of a thruster block over here. Maybe we should do that rather than having the thrusters up front and center like this and poorly shielded. It's still a little bit bad to have our main power supply right there, but it would allow us to put a little bit of extra defenses around here. You know what? Sure, give me a few moments to settle on the specifics of how we're going to armor this up, and we'll build a little thruster block. Now, I said I wasn't going to do it, and then I'm immediately thinking of doing it. But one of the things that you can do is you can be extremely exacting with stuff like this. And so you can build them within the ship. You can completely enclose it. And I'm not 100% on that, though I guess, you know, in space, as long as the exhaust has had enough time to dissipate, then it isn't too bad, especially if it's plowing into some sort of heat-resistant armor block. It might not be so bad, because it's still going to produce the correct sort of thrust, but it feels a little bit cheesy, which is why I tend to air away from that sort of thing. But give me a few moments and I shall bring you back to a fresh thruster block setup and some better armor. And there we go. Make it so. Now, the rear end of our ship now looks hopelessly empty. And indeed, much of the armor isn't where I want it to be yet because we are lacking on materials. So that's just something we're going to have to get going before we do too much more expansion. But I'm already starting to like what we're looking at here. We're starting to load these up. And again, because they're bringing down fairly large battery packs from the medium reactors, you notice if they decide to take one from the... Let me come back out of that. Is it paused for some specific reason? Are we being approached? It looks like we might be. Yes, we are. So I'll just pause that there for a second. But you notice how they're taking single batteries. This is a double battery. Same amount of manpower is required for it. But unfortunately, they're taking batteries from this capacitor to fill up this one. That is a hopelessly inefficient way of doing it. But, you know, we're just going to have to let them do it like that for now. There are lots of things that we can change over here. One of the things I'm kind of interested in doing is perhaps setting up some people conveyors, which would dramatically increase the speed of getting things to and from the main reactors at the front. I'm not a big fan of having the big reactors like this at the front, but it's what we're going to have to do with for now. But the ship as a whole is starting to come together. These areas are obviously fairly vulnerable, and yes, we could extend armor out over here. Like I said, you can basically completely encase your thrusters. I just don't really feel right about doing it in the same way that I don't feel super thrilled about liquid locks in Oni. Let's make sure that everyone is on board. Let's see if there's anything out. It looks like, oh, there was a ship out there, and it got unalived by another ship. Oh, very well. I will accept this very fortunate bounty. There we go. Let's go ahead and grab a little bit of all of this. But I'm really happy with the sort of changes we're making right now. We've got bunches of bounties to hand in. We're a little bit shy on money, unfortunately. Do we want to chase them down? They're not coming our way yet. We do have a bounty to just take out random pirates we find, but for the time being, this is good enough. Now, I do need to add in some more storage again, because I took a couple of those out. Let's go ahead. At this point, though, I could afford to fit in some fairly large storages, in fact. Let's go ahead with that, sure. Let's get that built, and that way we can grab some more gubbins around the place. Now, you can, of course, simply purchase whatever you want from stations, and there is something to be said about that. If you want to have more action, like that's the main part of the game that you're interested in, you don't really want to do any industry or like micromanage the inventories, then you can 100% just buy everything you need, go out, take quests, hunt bounties, so on and so forth, and do it that way. We are moving at a snail's pace now. Oh, it's painful. We need some much larger thrusters down there. Oh, we've got potential resources for said much larger thrusters. What? Did you just get unalived as well? Could people stop taking out all of the ships that I need to explode? Very rude. What is that? Oh, that's a rock. Never mind. Anything? Did they die? I don't see them. I wonder, are we just losing scanners because the power requirement down here is too far away? I wouldn't have thought so, but oh. Once again, every time you move these, they default. Perhaps I should change the security mode to like a generalist role. Could we get in there? I don't actually think we're fast enough anymore. That is embarrassing. My lord, we are that slow. We're a very chunky boy. Okay, well, let's have a look at a couple of other options. We don't have enough plates for this. We don't have enough plates for that either. Damn it. Okay. Well, we could hope that you slow down. Hey, can you please, sir, come back? Balls. And we finally made it back. Oh my lord, slow boating it over to a station has been painful in the extreme. All right, let's drop off some stuff. We ended up with a couple of fights on the way just because the enemy bumped into us while running away from someone else. That was the only way that we could end up in a fight. So we've managed to fill out a couple of the storages there. But let's. The important part here is to get the bounty payouts, which we've got a decent amount of there. 3,800, 3,300, 3,300. Very nice indeed. My lord. We'll also sell off a bunch of random gubbins as well, but we definitely need to expand things out a bit. Oh my goodness, this was a chore. Right, now with access to the market at the station, we should be able to put everything we want together. In fact, we could even go large thrusters. And could we go up to the next tier of that? It might be a bit too expensive, frankly. This is still 1.3k. But let's... can we not get... right, okay. We want to pop that in. There we go. And then we delete these. There we are. That is a bit better. This is going to give us a lot more forward thrust, though perhaps even we want more. This might be where we want to look into getting an engineering bay. But there are a couple of other things we want to grab as well. This is the very minimum that we need. So let's go ahead and take that, hail the station again, and see how much it's going to cost to get some more blueprints. One thing first, I really would like the moving walkway. It's a possibility, I suppose. But if we go grab the huge structure is 4,500. I can only imagine this is going to cost a ridiculous amount. I can't see exactly how much it costs. It's a shame. But we could get the engine room. And I think of the two, this is the more important right now. Yes, let's go ahead and grab that. I'm not certain how much that's going to cost us. Let's have a quick look. Ooh, that costs a lot. Buying the components that we're short on. Yes, we're going to need some... Let me go in here. I might be able to see... Oh, okay. It's going to bug me that I don't know what that material is called. So let's have a quick look in here. What is it? There, tri-steel. Okay, and then that does come from titanium. Okay, so the tri-steel, not cheap. Not cheap at all. It's 180 per one. Though the hypercolors are the more expensive, and then the processors as well. And I believe this requires... Oh, no, actually, it is only the tri-steel. Okay, well, that isn't terrible then. The hypercolors are the real expense there. Right, let's add in a little bit more shape to the armor at the back. We're obviously going to be replacing a lot of this, but for now, that will do nicely, I think. Getting the engineering rooms, it's going to take some time, and probably we'll have to redesign all of this around fitting the engine rooms in there. I wonder if we have enough money to buy the moving, conveyor belts, the moving walkways. Sure, let's pick that up. I don't know how much that's going to cost, so let's find out. A coil. That's not terrible, actually. All right. Well, given that, then, let's go ahead and set these up. So we are going to want these coming down from up here all the way down. Sure, let's take it all the way down to here. Now, you kind of want to offer brakes wherever there is a connection point. You want to allow people to get off the walkway, if you can. We've got enough cars that we can do this whole thing all the way up if we really want to. So it's a little bit inefficient to have the doorways here. In fact, I think what we could do instead is just move these around a little bit, and we could end up with quite an efficient build over here. So there we go. We've got a people mover. We'll move this door down, just so it's a little bit easier to get to. But there we are. So our crew can get to and fro nice and quickly. There's a little break there so that they don't have to fight. If they want to go down here, they don't have to fight being taken up there first. I don't know if that's actually more efficient or less, really. Perhaps someone has done the math on that, but it certainly isn't me. Right, the last bit then, perhaps we could at this point just flesh out the armor just around here. We don't have much metal to play with, but we do have a little bit. So let's go ahead and just add a little bit more coverage there. And down here as well, for as long as we can make it happen. So pop that there. Down here as well, pop this one over there. Oop, autosave. And at this stage, what I will say is weave your armor if you can. Kind of like the way you would lay a brick wall. Don't have them just stacked like this. Have them stacked like that instead. That way, you're going to force, potentially, an enemy's weapon to have to burrow through more bricks than it would need to otherwise. Just increasing the stability of the design effectively. The same could be done over here, for example. Now that I look at it, if we did that, then that actually gives a little bit more stability there as well. And down here as well, I think because the larger armor blocks have more hit points, so that's... Oh, actually, is it more hit points? Yes, 4,000 versus 8,000. By orienting it in such a way that you've got more double layers than single layers, you're just going to force them to have to burrow through potentially extra hit points that they wouldn't have had to do otherwise if they had a fairly direct route. Okay, so we've got a lot of thrust now. We have a little bit too shy on the money, so I'm going to start peeling back armor at the back there. There we go. All right, because hopefully we're not going to be presenting the rear of the vessel to our enemies. Famous last words, I know. Right, okay, let's get out there and cover a couple more bounties that we have here and there. We've got a few things that, as I was flying back, we actually explored as well. Now, what's our top speed? 50? Ugh. We really do need to increase the speed of our ship. That is going to be something very important. What do we have here? We've got... Oh. Well, I mean, it is straight up a spare ship. It's even got a hyperdrive. But right now, I don't think we're at the point where I want a fleet. That is probably going to be something that we may look into in the next episode, or the one after that. I would like to try and cover topics per episode if I'm able to, and the topic for this one was basically increasing the efficiency of our ship and addressing some of the comments. But I would very much like to do a bit of... Ooh, what have we here? Whatever it is protected. How do I feel about that? I'm not sure. But I would like to cover industry at some point. Right, so these are static defenses by the looks of it. Oh, is this a pirate base? I strongly suspect that it is. So we are going to choose life and leave that well enough alone. That does not look like a place that we want to play around with right now. We'll come back to you later. Oh, well, this is an interesting one. We've just discovered a ship graveyard on our way back to Rexiseno Station. We've also discovered something else besides. But let's have a quick look in here. So we've got a bunch of wrecks, it seems like, which is fantastic news for us. Now, one way that you can have a look through a ship graveyard, I recommend just moving around and just checking if you can transfer your crew to anything. Because your crew can only transport to a vessel that has an airlock and a crew quarters. So you could conceivably just move around the ship graveyard looking for ships that are in a sufficiently not absolutely wrecked state that you could take them over. We've got a couple around here. Mind you, honestly, I think you'd probably have a better time just tearing up, down a pirate, just knocking out their cockpit, and then replacing that. It's an expensive component to replace, but it's a lot less expensive than everything else you'd have to replace on these wrecks. We've got a little bit of something heading our way, but that's absolutely fine. We've got so much to do. Sorry, everyone. I know I'm asking you to do a lot, but do remember to breathe. And with a couple of wrecks worth of plates and coils, there we go. We have finished a fairly extensive redesign of the Dapper One. At this point, I definitely feel this ship needs a new name. I'm not even sure what it looks like with the paint active. It definitely needs a new name and a new paint job. But I'm fairly happy with what we've managed to do. We do need to get more power down at the rear of the ship, requiring, or rather relying entirely on the capacitor banks over here. Not exactly the best idea, but it is serviceable. And what on earth are you doing? Just deciding to go back and forth just for the sake of it? Fair enough. But these have actually worked out. These movers are fantastically useful. They are massively reducing the time taken to move batteries back and forth from the front to the rear of the ship. But I ultimately, I kind of feel that this should be the other way around. I should have the reactors towards the rear and just bring the energy up to our weapon systems. There's a lot to be said about that. Maybe move this more into towards the middle once we upgrade and actually have double the ion batteries and have the reactors somewhere around here. But I'm fairly happy with the armoring of the ship at this point. So the last thing that we could do is maybe go and have a look for a bit of a fight and just test out what this ship can do at this point. Let's head back to the station, see if there are any other bounties that we can pick up. I would very much like to see what our top speed is now as well. It actually accelerates up. It's not that much better, really. We've only just about increased it by, well, actually just 8.1 meters a second over what we had with just the two engines. That being said, if we could get the engineering stations in there, it would require a little bit more of a redesign again, but that would massively increase our overall speed. And with a quick trip over to another station in order to buy the tri-steel that we needed. Make it so. Okay, so the first thing you're going to notice, and something you might panic about, I've taken all the way away all of the doors for our engines. Don't need them anymore. This will distribute power automatically, so all we need is someone in there manning the engineering room and loading it up with batteries whenever it needs it. Now that doesn't work for the shield, very sad, but that's fine. Now, one thing I don't know is, would I need access in order to be able to put out fires? Now that seems like a very important one. So maybe going without the doors whilst possible isn't the best idea. Let's just err on the side of caution, shall we? That, as much as it seems like this is a very efficient thing to do, it might also be a very dumb thing to do. And on the note of fires, how about we get a fire extinguisher built down here as well? There we go. Now, I'm noticing that these are not actually always manned, which is a bit of a problem, frankly, so how about we also fix that? You may notice that I've moved things around a little bit. So we've got a smaller crew bunk over there, and we could add more of those in, or I could expand this area out a little bit. Like, for example, I could have some engineering beds down here as well. These were initially put in there so I could have some generalist crew, and I kind of like the idea of just having a couple of generalist crew, considering all the problems that we've had so far. But let's go ahead and pump these down, shall we? This is the final thing that we're working on today. There we go. So we've got a couple of engineering areas. How about, we're going to have the engineers both... get out of their bunk into a storage bay, because nothing says engineer like rolling out of bed into a bunch of random gubbins for building stuff. Make it so. And, of course, change these back to engineer bunks. Now, these ones, I would actually like to be generalist bunks if I could make that happen, but for the time being, we're just going to set them up with security just for the sake of it. Do we have enough money to get more crew? Now, that is a big question, one I don't think the answer is affirmative on. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and dump a bunch. Well, let's just sell everything we've got in order to try and make the cash. Selling this? No, because we're going to need those. We'll get 6 grand out of that, should be fine. Now, we can hire a couple of peeps. Let's allow that trade to go through, move the money across, and then as it does, we can get a couple more. There we go, we can get 6 crew members. Now the rest, we're going to need a lot of money for all that, unfortunately. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, hey, about these beds, how about you all go down there, and you go down there, please. You're switching stations. There we go. That should keep things going. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you to get to and from. Let's pop some doors in there. Now, I would love to see you constantly manning that, and I think perhaps a part of the problem is this. Let's go in here, engineering roles. Let's make sure that the engineering station, this is now as high a priority as this, I would say. Checking out the bridge, yeah, that's fine, but I'm going to have operate and supply really high on these. In fact, I'm going to drop supply down a little bit further for those, because generally speaking, I want these to be manned first and foremost. Let's see if that sorts things out. We should see crew always making sure that those are running. And at this point, I'm really hoping that we can actually move at a reasonable speed now. Let's go ahead and head over here and see what... Oh, look at that. Up to 79, almost 80 meters. Look at the plumes. Look at the trails from those thrusters now. That's actually kind of wild. Oh yeah, that's the pirate base. Maybe we don't go and take our extremely expensive just built ship down there to say hi to a bunch of turrets. Might not be the best idea. Let's look for someone to play with elsewhere first then. Have I found another pirate base? Damn it! Why are there so many pirate bases around? That's fine. I might be able to lure you into a fight that you really should not jump into, but we'll see what we can do. Scooch up close. That is definitely a pirate base, but there's lots of pirates around this pirate base, which is perfect for me. Okay, so to recap what we've done with the design, all of these thrusters are now working 50% faster, so for every 2 I've effectively got a spare one. So we've got a 1.5 extra thrusters moving forward and 1 extra thruster in reverse. These ones are still manual and they're not getting any kind of bonus. This is significantly easier to run now, though, as you can see, they are running out of batteries down there, which is a little bit of an issue. We'll hope that that isn't going to bite us in the backside, shall we? Let's go for the cockpit. That should be fine. And again, range, let's try and stay somewhat out of their range. Now we're going to finally see if we can manage that or not. We've got a lot of reverse thrust now, so I would hope that they're actually kept at range. And in fact, they are being kept at range, it looks like. If we zoom right in, we should see that, well, they're slowly creeping up on us. Very slowly, but we could keep them under sustained firepower for most of that time. But it is a little bit of a sadness there that we're not actually able to outrun these tiny little ships still, despite having an engineering section. Maybe this is time for us to start looking at getting the really, really big thrusters then, because that would certainly help out, as each one is more than double the power of the one that came before. So if we could get some large thrusters and also have the benefit of the engine rooms on those, that would be absolutely fantastic. As you can see, we lack crew. I definitely feel that we need some different crew roles, and engineering should more or less focus on running the engine room and supplying the engine room. And then we could have some generalist roles for things like salvaging. And in fact, getting a mining laser would probably be a reasonable investment as well. Let's scooch over here. There we go. And you should be able to get back on board nice and fast. There we are. Not too bad, but we've got one more fight in us, I think, before we wrap up this episode. They're looking at the length of time of this recording. Seriously, it takes a long time to do building. There's going to be some pretty savage cutting going on, I'm sorry to say. Hopefully you won't mind too much and the end result will be well worth it, but I guess that's for you to decide, really. Right, who are we going to be taking on? They're both exactly the same. Let's go for the reactor on you, and then the reactor on... Oh. Yeah, then the reactor on you. Can I do that or not? No, it doesn't look like. Doesn't look like I can switch ships. Well, I suppose I can in a way. Let's do that order again, just to make sure everything is working all right. And let's keep you at a nice, healthy range away from me. And let's see how this goes. Now, I'm facing off against two enemies. Not exactly what I want to see, but it should be fine. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm definitely keeping pace with them this time. Maybe I just... maybe we started off in disadvantageous position. It took us a while to correct, but definitely looks like we're able... Yes, we are. We are absolutely able to accelerate. Okay, so never mind. Hooray! I'm very glad I came over here to do these two fights then, because I was feeling a little bit crestfallen that our incredibly expensive ship was being outrun by effectively fighters. That being said, fighters should be able to outrun a massive chunky ship like this, but still, considering how much we've invested in thrusters, it felt a little bit like insult to injury on that one. But so far, so good. I think we've corrected some of the problem that we had with adding all of this extra armor and really layering in the defense of the ship. I feel it is a lot better now, especially with the addition of the extra shield compartments to try and keep the thruster blocks nice and safe. Again, I'm not entirely sure where I sit on my capacity to overlook how cheesy it is just to build the thrusters into the hull and for them to still work normally. We'll have to see. Again, let me know in the comments down below how you feel about that. And in fact, let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the series as a whole. I really do hope you've enjoyed it, because I'm having an amazing amount of fun playing around with this. And let me know what you're more interested in seeing next, whether it be a bit of industry or whether you want us to jump straight into fleet operations, which might in and of itself tie into industry. Eventually, perhaps it would be useful to have little small mining ships that we could just send off to to clear out an entire asteroid belt while our combat ships go off and wipe out the enemies. That is definitely something that we could look at doing. But either way, thank you ever so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure, and I hope to see you in the next episode. But until then, from me and the crew of the currently Dapper One, though I'm feeling a name change is in its immediate future, do take care, everyone.